Hey, everybody, welcome to our new episode. This episode today, let's see,
Pretty
is
basic.
called Is Matter the Stuff of Mind? So what human beings see, feel, and hear is your current best view of the God idea of reality. What's present is the God idea infinitely manifesting right now, right now, right now, right now. We don't live in the world as it is, but as our individual perception allows. This is hugely empowering if you really look at it. We want to pay attention to our seeing, our point of view about whatever's happening. So remember, we live and move and have being mentally, and we always have. Hi, Betty. How are you today?
Fine, thanks.
Excellent. One of the things I want to do is say a little bit about our sponsor, the Institute of Metaphysical Science. Established in 1959 as the Margaret Laird Foundation, researching, exploring, living, and teaching the science of being and the causal nature of consciousness. Our website is www.scientificmetaphysics.org. And this episode, as many of our past episodes is all based on the book Government is Self-Government by Margaret Laird. It is an excellent book. That's why we keep sticking with it, because in the day that we live in the day and the age that we live in, understanding that government is self-government is hugely important, that you call the shots, that you actually get to say. It's your perception. You either buy the picture or you line yourself with the facts of being. So anyways, welcome, Mom.
Thank you.
Or Betty. Okay. So is there anything that you want to say about what we're covering today?
Yeah, this is kind of a basic session. And I just think I'll read this that came from the beginning of the chapter that we're talking about, because it gives you a little history here. It's only recently, really, that the medical profession, and particularly the branch of healing known as psychiatry, has equated the illusory dualism of mind and matter with and as disease. Until psychiatry came along and got the educators, the professional people who anyway, to consider the mental nature of disease, did we ever make any inroads into the mental nature of everything? So the development of psychiatry and sociology and all of those things has really contributed to the capacity to consider the science emphasis on the mental nature of all living. So it was a great boon, anyway, when that came along. Mrs. Laird wrote, "Sin, sickness, death are language." All the stuff that we see every day, the physical look of the universe, all of that conditioning, it's language stating the fact that infinite individuality or mind is man. It's not a material personality. It looks like a material personality, but that's not what pulls the strings. That's not what runs the show. There, we've said this before too on this show, but there's a divinity present whenever you show up. So if I can see myself in the mirror, there's a divinity present. Now, the capacity to be a listening for your intuition, for your divine insight, that's a discipline. And that's what metaphysical science is encouraging, to get you to listen for the things that you already have access to that you don't know anything about. So we'll expand on that, but I really thought this whole session is very basic to what metaphysical science is all about.
Well, yeah. And so to that end, if this is a conversation, if you're like a conversation, you could give us a heart or a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're watching from YouTube. All of those things we would loves. You can hit that subscribe button also. So let's dive right in. So in Government is Self-Government on page 62, Margaret Laird wrote, "The material personality cannot be healed since it is the disease from which humanity suffers. The awareness that translates matter into mind is the metaphysical healing of physical disease."
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was just going to say that this language is a little bit stilted, but what she's actually saying is it looks like, for instance, that I might get rid of a headache or heal a disease that I came up with. But what actually is true is that when I identify with the reality present that has Betty show up, changes occur in the look of Betty. And Betty is really my contact point with myself. It's the way I can play the game of living in every day. You know, I have Betty to work with. So when I'm actually on track with what's so, when I understand even tiny bits that mind is what has the determining factor, if I can put it that way, in everything I do, then I can let go of some of the points of view that I have that I'm sort of stuck with. You know, Betty has things she really likes and stuff she doesn't like at all. And when I let those things interfere, I'm sort of out of sync with myself. But when I quiet that stuff down and really pay attention to the fact that there is an intuitive presence that already has all the answers, then the problems that come up don't seem nearly as daunting. Solutions arise that I had no way to appreciate until now.
Right. It reminds me when you said, when you first started talking, it's like the look that, you know, my circumstances, whatever, are the things that tell me my being. You know what I mean? It's a reflection back on who am I being. And really what I looked at there is like, well, the stuff to pay attention to, if you can call it that, is divinity, is being. That's what there is to pay attention to acknowledge, and to let the picture alone, because the picture is just a reflection of that. If you start playing in the picture, it's like driving from the rear view mirror, because you're looking at the past rather than what you're living, because the being is what generates the picture you see and what it is you experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, a bit, yeah. It's a bit hard to follow that one. But the thing that we are aware as students of metaphysical science, the keynote is this little sentence that says, all is infinite mind. And that is basically the fact that has everything happening in my life. It's the mental nature of everything about me that makes the difference. And that doesn't show up looking like Betty intelligently functioning unless there's an acknowledgement of that fact. Because for everyone, every single human being functioning anywhere, there is a divine presence right there, right where they are, having that look occur. Now, if you don't know that, you get all wrapped up in having Betty be the big wheel. And she's got to know the answer. And what she thinks is best is what we're going to do. And sometimes you really sink your ship with that, because Betty doesn't know a lot of stuff, but she thinks she does. You know, she's a smart cookie and she thinks she knows a lot of stuff. But if she can allow herself to know whatever she knows, but kind of listen to see how that all fits in to the moment's living, it's going to make a difference in the outcome each moment. I can be in a situation that appears dangerous. I can be in a situation that looks like help is needed of some kind. Looks like there's an answer that nobody knows. And if I can be quiet enough as Betty and awake enough as divine being, whatever will relieve the picture is going to occur.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll find myself walking on, free, joyous, complete.
Yeah.
It has a direct effect on every moment of everyday living. It isn't just something I need when I have mumps or measles or something like that. It's like every single day, there's stuff that I'm into that if I had really a clear method of proceeding, it would go as smooth as glass. Wouldn't be a single problem.
Right.
And it's hard to explain some of that, but I keep talking about it because I've been around a lot of times. And I tell you, each time that this is the way it works, I think, oh, why don't I do this all the time? How do people manage that don't know about this? Well, we would like them to know about it. So we keep talking about it. But until you have had the experience yourself, that there's an answer to whatever confronts you, and it's possible for you, just the way you are right now, to access that answer. And we're trying to point out the science that makes that possible.
Right. So in Science and Health, Mary Baker Eddy on page 285 said, "What then is the material personality which suffers, sins, and dies? It is not man, the image and likeness of God, but man's counterfeit, the inverted likeness, the unlikeness called sin, sickness, and death."
Yeah. And the sin, sickness, and death, she equates with the Betty.
Mm-hmm.
You and I both know that if something comes down the pike called a disease, who's going to get it? The Betty look. It's not going to happen to the intuitive divine presence, but the Betty look. And the way it happens is that Betty thinks that she exists outside the realm of reality. She thinks she exists separate, somewhere over here in San Diego,
Mm-hmm.
in a house on the hill, that sort of thing. And to the degree that I identify with that, I have all the stuff that goes with being a two-legged animal with all its challenges. To the degree that I can say, wait a minute, that's the way it looks. Now, what's the way that it is? The way that it is there is a divinity present, shaping exactly what Betty is up to. Oh. And that divinity is whole and complete and fully present, powerful, joyous, fulfilled, satisfied, all those things. So if I can kind of be aware and be willing to have that direct the effort, the things are going to be much simpler in the Betty look of things.
Right. And if we look at how you said the same idea in your book, Mind is the Athlete, on page 28, you wrote, "Whenever the conscious human individual exercises true choice, the listening that has no personal attachment clouding vision, the possibility of peace, joy, and health beyond any previous norm becomes available."
Yep. Too well said, don't you think?
Yeah, it's well said. All right, so moving on. In Government is Self-Governed on page 63 and 64, Margaret Laird wrote, "The reason for his great capability to control his bodily functions consciously is the fact that Shepard or anyone is the thinking or conscious thought that constitutes his body or identity.
Yeah, you kind of skipped over the note that preceded this. You need in Margaret's book, Government of Self-Government, she talks about Alan Shepard. He was one of the early astronauts, and he was grounded because he had a hearing problem. It was not a hearing problem. Let me put it this way. He had a problem with balance, and it had to do with his inner ear. So it was an ear problem, but not a hearing problem. Anyway, and so he took it on, knowing that he could actually manage and control his balance and be even keeled and able to function perfectly. And he did it well. And so the surgeon that worked with him after he was grounded said of him, he's much less susceptible than any individual who had not had any problem with the vestibular or balance system. His chances of becoming dizzy have been greatly decreased by his ability, and Margaret says his divine self-strengthening, but his ability to control the sensation by mental conditioning. Now, he was a metaphysician.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then comes the quote from Margaret's book again that you read a minute ago. The reason for his great ability to control his bodily functions consciously is the fact that Shepard or anyone else is the thinking or conscious thought that constitutes his body, his identity. So really and truly, I could say that Betty is the conscious thought of that divinity that controls everything she's up to. And if I don't listen to that, too bad. But if I do, okay.
And Margaret wrote, the one living his divinity consciously as mind, taking no thought for himself physically, since thinking, conscious identity is himself, will be increasingly able to do what he wills with the physical body he is living metaphysically. In such insightful self-conscious living, his thinking is his body.
Yeah, and that's a loaded statement, but it's a great statement. And it's exactly right on. Yep.
Yeah. And in Science and Health on page 269, Mary Baker Eddy said or wrote, metaphysics resolves things into thoughts and exchanges the objects of sense for the ideas of soul.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anything you want to add?
Nope, I think it's...
Okay. And then in your book, Mind is the Athlete, on page 29, you say, thoughts are things in a universe constituted of consciousness. The physical world we are consciously experiencing is the world of our mind.
Yep, it is. And you know, the physicists are saying some of these very same things. So you want to pay attention when you read something about what's going on in the world of physics, the latest advances in their study. They really are coming up with things like they can say there isn't anything to observe until there's an observer, for example. Mm-hmm. Well, that means something mentally present, observing, has that thing show up that they're observing. And play with those ideas because they're right on, whether we know it or not.
Right.
You'll have fun with it.
Yep. And Deborah wrote or commented, I am sustained by the love of God.
Yep. Right on.
Yep.
And when you say that, you don't say that loosely, but you have to recognize that love as a God quality is like the air we breathe. Love is all around. It's everywhere. And it's not what we define love to be. You know, it has nothing to do with that. What that is kind of an interpretation, a point of view, if you will, of the love that is everywhere present. So thank you very much. That's very good.
Right. Now, on Government is Self-Government on page 65, Margaret Laird wrote, the Greeks had a saying, for man to live is to use reason, mind or intelligence, and to depart from reason is to depart from being man. Our existential world is known only in the mirror of our own mind.
Yep.
And Mary Baker Eddy, in Science and Health on page 319, said, mystery, miracle, sin, and death will disappear when it becomes fairly understood that the divine mind controls man and man has no mind but God.
Yep. The God idea present in action constitutes man. Yeah.
Okay. And in Mind is the Athlete, you wrote, the divinity that embraces the humanity of every single individual knows no limitation in any direction of thought. What you already know can be a launching pad for what's next, or it can be a prison if it cuts you off from accessing possibility.
Yeah. And it becomes a prison when you live. If I live myself as Betty, I'm really shortchanging myself and what's possible. I've really cut off or closed the door on what's possible beyond what you can just see right around me.
Right.
But
And
when I'm open to listening and accessing the divine, the world is unlimited. The experience of the world is unlimited. The answers available are unlimited. No impossibility exists in that world.
right. But the key is in letting the look, the circumstances alone.
Yep.
Stop fussing with them.
You got to leave the picture alone. Remember, the picture is your point of view of the God idea. You want to be listening for that presence. Leave the point of view alone.
Right.
It's going to shift anyway, and then you'll have a new one to look at.
Right. And the more you fuss with it, the more you try and rearrange the furniture or the circumstances, the more they stay the same.
Yep.
The more you have no other possibility, no other potential. You can't see what's right there because you're so busy trying to fix and change something that's from the past that isn't causative in any way. And yet it's the biggest discipline. In our last episode, the longest stride of soul, to pay attention and be willing to allow it to be and acknowledge the one divinity present, the perfection present that has it show up exactly the way it's showing up as the only way you can see it.
At that moment.
Right now. That's right. But if you don't get locked into it, it's right now, right now, right now. And it's all a new moment. And it can shift like that. And when you're with it, it does.
You want to clarify one thing that you said. You said it's from the past. Tell us how that's true.
Anything happening that I'm seeing and looking at is all from the past. It's not right now. Even when I think I'm present, what I'm looking at is from the past, because being generates that. That means it already got generated. Being present, being is sourcing. If I'm present to being, acknowledging being, if there's something in the picture that wants to shift or change, it's acknowledging the perfection present, not fussing with it, and staying right with source, the causative principle that shapes everything that we see, hear, feel, taste, and touch.
Thanks.
That's what I mean by that. Did
Thanks.
that communicate?
Yep.
Okay. So anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, I wrote, have you ever wondered what has us behave the way we do? It has to do with an instinctive or intuitive awareness that we already own it all.
Yeah.
And then I have this, I found this quote from Wayne Dyer, a transformational writer. He says, the booby trap is believing what you see in place of seeing what you believe.
Yeah, that's excellent. Okay. And with that, that's all we've got for today. So
Unless somebody has a question.
Unless we have a question or a comment, the challenge between now and next week, should you choose to accept it, is to acknowledge and be willing for your life, the circumstances in it, all of that, to look exactly the way they look and exactly the way they don't, acknowledging and being willing to have it be exactly that, acknowledging being, cause, divinity is what shapes your ends. And you'll go on and do all the stuff you do. Go for it. Have a ball. And acknowledge what it is that constitutes it all. Okay, so that's your assignment. Should you choose to accept it. And we will see you next week at 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific, same channel, and we'll see you then. Until then, be willing. See you later.